Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a Levi's tailor in California, and today I'll be doing a tint dip on some white tops. I'm working with what I have, and what I have on hand are some acrylic pigments and some white tops. So I will be doing some tint dip to refresh some of those pieces and add a little color. First, I gather my supplies. I'll need white or light colored garments, an acrylic pigment that is fabric friendly, 2 to 3 buckets or pots, a water source, gloves, a stir stick, hangers and twine, a place to hang the items to dry. I have a great drying rack for this, an oven, and a washing machine or a tub to wash and rinse. Once I've gathered my supplies, I wash and soak the garments. So I rinse the garments well to remove any oils on the surface and prepare them for dyeing. I did this in a washing machine, but you can also do it in a bucket and just wet and agitate the garments and wring them out well. Next, I prepare my dyes. In this case, I take a water-based acrylic pigment that is used for fabrics, and I dilute it with water. I don't use any specific measurements or ratios here. I'm just looking to make a big enough dye bath for these garments to fit into. I know that I want something that's a little bit lighter in color, and I know that it'll also turn out textured and streaky, so I'm happy with whatever is going to happen. But if you want really vibrant colors, I would say use as much pigment as you can. Next, I tie my garments to the hangers. So since I want to dip the trucker in shoulders first, I want to rig it up with twine and a hanger so it's easier to dip without the sleeves flopping in. I know that the trucker is going to be quite heavy when I flip it upside down and dip it, so I want to rig this up to make it easy for myself. I loop twine around the bottom buttons and the sleeve buttons, and I loop that same twine to the hanger so that everything will stay relatively even when the garment is upside down. Next, I dip the garments. I dip each garment in separately and use one hand to agitate the pigment around the garment and separate any folds so that the color can reach every surface. It only needs to be in there for about a minute. I then squeeze the garments out thoroughly as I pull them out of the dye bath, conserving as much pigment as possible. Next, I hang the garments to dry. This particular pigment asks for about 2 hours of drying time. Between dip colors, I just want to let it dry enough that there is no pigment dripping and shifting, but before I cure the pigment, I want to let it sit for over 2 hours and dry thoroughly. This step took longer than I anticipated for each color, so plan accordingly. Drying often takes longer than you think it's going to, especially on thicker garments like the sweatshirt and the trucker. The t-shirt dried really quickly. I can then repeat those steps as needed based on the style and the number of colors I'm going for. So I prepped all my colors at the same time. You could do one at a time if you wanted. You could also re-rig the garment to a hanger if you want to dip from a different angle. But I'm keeping these dips pretty simple, so I don't need to re-rig or anything. I just wait for it to dry a little bit. Once I'm done with my dips and the garments have dried for a few hours, I cure them in the oven to the pigment specifications. So originally I had planned on press setting these with the iron, but I realized that would take me several hours, and it also would still probably not result in a very even curing. So I decided to cure them in my oven. Now I know that I have great ventilation, and I also have some trays that I use for non-food projects. So I would not recommend doing this if you don't have a well-ventilated area. I set my oven to 305 degrees Fahrenheit, and I bake the garments in there for 8 minutes each to cure the pigment. Once the garments have cured, I wash and dry to soften. I wash the garments on cold. You can add an extra rinse cycle if you'd like, but it didn't seem necessary to me. I then hang them to dry. So I hang all of my items to dry. You can also use a dryer if preferred. And then the items are ready to wear. Alright, so all in all, I am very happy with this project. It was pretty easy. It does take quite a while for each of the steps in between, so the dipping is pretty quick. It only took me a couple of minutes per garment to dip them, but the drying steps take a while. The pigment is supposed to dry for about 2 hours before you even cure it, and then you'll need to cure, and then you will need to wash it and dry it again. So those in between steps take up a lot of time. So think about that if you're gonna do this project. I could have budgeted my time a little bit better around this had I really been realistic with how long it takes garments to dry, especially truckers. They take quite a while. So I'm happy with how the trucker turned out. I think it's really pretty. I love the texture and the depth of color that we got. Again, if you want it to be darker than this, if you want the colors to be richer, you could add more pigment and it would have been a richer tone, but I like this. It's kind of like cotton candy. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I'm also very happy with how this thing turned out. I really like it. I think it's got some fun texture throughout. The color is nice and vibrant, and I'm definitely gonna wear this. So there is the piece that didn't turn out well. And let's talk about why that is. I believe that this has polyester and cotton blend yarn in it. So I think that when I tried to cure it, I melted it and ruined the integrity of the fabric. So this piece is no longer viable. Even though the dipping itself turned out really well, I'm really bummed that I made this mistake, but I'm happy with the two pieces that did turn out. And I think as long as you're using garments that are 100% cotton or 100% natural fiber and making sure you're working in an area that's really well ventilated, this is a pretty easy project. So I would encourage people to try it. I think it was fun and kind of want to try it with more colors now.